Hey, it's Samantha with the Rediscover Real podcast. I am so thrilled to be here with you. Are you feeling overwhelmed, confused, or stuck on a hamster wheel from constantly seeking external tools, validation, and buffering in a search for more joy and fulfillment? Rediscover Real means to pull back the curtain and return to the foundation, peeling away the layers of mindsets, identities, and beliefs that no longer serve us. As we choose to grow, move forward, and show up fully as God intended, because at our very core, inside of you, lies everything already, as God created you absolutely perfect. We get to uncover and rediscover what's inside of us, and then to expand into what we're capable of. In this space, we'll dive into topics on personal finance and budgeting, mindset and growth, relationships, network marketing, and entrepreneurship. I'm sure there'll be some laughter and possibly a few tears along the way. I'm on this journey, and you're invited. I'm holding out my hand for you. Will you join me? Let's rediscover real together. The Black Friday sales are here. How are you going to steward your finances well in this season? Today, I want to unpack the whole concept around Black Friday and how to steward your money well in this season, and some tips and tricks, and also different ways you might approach it one way and somebody else might approach it a different way. And there's two main kind of types of buyers that we have out there, and which category do you fall into, and how can you, depending on where you fall in those two categories, how can you steward your finances well? And it might look different for you. So let's unpack Black Friday. First of all, why is Black Friday called Black Friday? What's the whole point? And also, more and more, I've been seeing Black Friday sales and emails coming through my inbox for the last week or 10 days now. And we're still a week out from Black Friday. And so I really wanted to unpack this because I think you can look at it kind of from a almost cynical viewpoint and be like, all the sales, they're just trying to get us to buy more stuff. And, Black Friday has turned into the whole month of November. And then we go into, Christmas and all the sales then and around Boxing Day and all of those pieces. So just a little bit of the background behind that, the whole Black Friday, the name around it, it became a thing because the whole point is for businesses to go that are maybe sitting in the red according to their accounting books. In other words, they're in debt, to be able to put stuff on sale and make enough money to end up in the black, or to be making money, to have kind of cross that threshold according, from an accounting perspective, to go from, red to black. So that's why it's called Black Friday. And I thought that's really interesting. Now, at the same time, obviously with that, the businesses are trying to get to a point where they're making money. And in the process of doing that, they're obviously trying to get you to part with as much money as possible. Now, don't take that from a cynical standpoint or viewpoint, or that they're out to get you. They're just offering you a solution to your problems with a very enticing offer attached to it, right? They've been offering the same thing all along. They're just trying to sweeten the deal to help you make that decision. It's not a bad thing. Sales is not bad. And there will be a separate podcast on that, talking more about sales and why sales is good. And if you can learn to shift your mindset around sales, you'll enjoy being a buyer a lot more. You'll enjoy selling a lot more because, just for the record, we're all selling every day. Whether you're selling your 2-year-old to put on a winter jacket, or whether you're selling to your boss of why you're valuable and why they should keep you, or your spouse on why it would be advantageous for them to help you put up the Christmas lights, or whatever that is, or to pick up their dirty clothes off the floor. We're all selling every day. So when we start to make those shifts, but that's going to be a podcast for another day. But when we start to actually make those shifts and approach it from a healthy mindset and not from a victim place and like they're out to get us, it becomes this really beautiful process. So sales is not bad. So when we talk about Black Friday sales, and there's so many coming across, and it can feel like you're getting bombarded with them. I know that's been a feeling for me. Here's the thing, leading up to, before I get into like the tactical of like, here's the steps to help you walk through that, I want to break down, there's two different kind of camps that people fall into. You can be an emotional buyer or you can be a logical buyer. An emotional buyer is driven by emotions. They're all often are the ones who are making impulse purchases, and they often have really strong brand loyalty. And in other words, they really love the one, that brand that they always buy from. A logical buyer makes more rational based decisions. They're more risk adverse, and they look at the long-term considerations of making that purchase. So these are like the people who have the budgets and the people who like budgeting and the people who, have their Black Friday lists and all of those things. And it was actually interesting when I was kind of pulling these thoughts together, because when I was going through the tips first, I'm like, okay, what are some really good tips that I could share with you all? I was going down the logical buyer, like all the things. And I was like, wait, I am very much a logical buyer. Now, that's not the case for everyone. Specifically, my mom is, I would say, very much an emotional buyer. And that's not a bad thing. It's just having the awareness of where you are, because then you can steward it from a much like healthier place. Because if you don't have the awareness around that, if you're an emotional buyer, you're probably going to be beating yourself up because you're making impulse purchases, or having a budget feels really restricting to you, or doing research beforehand. Like, you just don't do that and you're going to beat yourself up. But if you can go, okay, this is how I operate. Now, how can I steward my finances well while being an emotional spender or an emotional buyer, and being okay with that? Or if you're a logical buyer and maybe Black Friday doesn't feel as fun, or you're not one of the people who like goes and waits in line for all the things and you don't like quite get all the hype maybe as much, that's okay too. How can you take advantage of the Black Friday sales and steward your finances well and make wise decisions without just like checking out and blocking it all and like opting out? Because there are really great deals and great ways for you to steward your finances well, get discounts, all of those things. So knowing what you are, whether you're a logical buyer or an emotional buyer, is really key. And that actually, I'm going to probably dig into that more on a separate podcast. And I have a free worksheet coming for you as well, so that you can kind of work through that and then set that up for yourself depending on where you're at. The next piece that I want to talk about. So once if you're kind of like, oh yeah, that's totally how I buy. Yeah, that's totally the camp I fall into. You probably have a good idea of where you fall in that. Or if you don't, maybe you can, if you think of other people that you know and how they buy, and then go, okay, where, like, do I purchase like them, or am I the opposite of that, right? And Violet has joined today to add her wisdom. Anyways, so next up is, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see here. Next up is scarcity and abundance. So, actually before I talk about that, I want to talk about, if you've ever heard of the 6 human needs. This is coming from Tony Robbins. But the 6 human needs, I'll just quickly run through them, are certainty, uncertainty, significance, love and connection. And then the 2 that are kind of, he calls them like spirit needs, are growth and contribution. So we all require and seek every one of those first 4. Now, depending on where we're at in terms of awareness and mindset work and how much we've dug into that, you might seek one more than another. And it might come out in some unhealthy ways. That's going to be a separate podcast. But going into Black Friday, and I'm going to say primarily as an emotional spender, but also as a logical spender, depending on where you're at, because you can be a logical spender and still have the unhealthy like need to seek significance. And so going into Christmas, if you are seeking significance first in trying to, let's say, be special, be loved more, you're seeking love and connection the most, or you're trying to seek significance and be significant, as an emotional spender, this is going to show up as, well, I need to buy all of this stuff regardless of my finances because they won't love me. My, kids, spouse, family, extended family, coworkers, whoever else you're buying gifts for, they won't love me unless I show up with the perfect gifts. And I don't care if I have to max all my credit cards out. This is a need I have to fulfill. Or seeking significance in, maybe you're not worried about your finances so much, but you're so driven by being an emotional buyer and being able to go make impulse purchases, and that oh yeah, we went Black Friday shopping and bought all this stuff, and you're sharing how much stuff you did and how long you stood in line and all of those pieces. Now, I'm not saying any of that's bad. It's the driving factor behind it. Are you trying to seek significance from that? Now, from a logical buyer perspective, oftentimes I see people seeking significance from the place of opting out of Black Friday. Oh, well, we just buy stuff. We don't need to buy into that whole Black Friday hype. We just buy stuff when we need it, and that's all we do. Or we stick to a very strict budget and we don't do any Black Friday shopping. You can kind of have that that flip, really just trying to feed your ego. And our ego is just trying to keep us safe. But we're seeking significance in, oh, well, I don't need to do that, right? Or, well, I just stick to my budget and, I make things work, right? If you're really tight, let's say your finances are fairly tight right now, you seek significance by saying, well, we stuck to our budget. We did those, Now, I'm not saying sticking to your budget is a bad thing. But when it comes from that place of you're seeking significance, kind of like that humble pride of well, we're fine with nothing. That's not healthy either. And so no shame and guilt on either side of the fence, or towards anyone. And that's what I see so often with budgeting, and where this whole thing for me has evolved into talking about the money mindset portion, because you can't budget and steward your finances well until you have a healthy mindset around money and spending money and budgeting and all of those pieces. I'm not saying throw the budget out, but you have to have a healthy mindset around that. It's not one or the other. It never is, right? Okay, so are you seeking significance and or love and connection? What's your driving factor behind wanting to purchase that item, behind the whole concept of Black Friday, all of those pieces? Now I'm going to come back to scarcity versus abundance, because so many times, and I have fallen into this trap as well in the past, I see people approach Black Friday and they go shopping, or anytime there's sales on, and they're like, well, it's 50% off. Now I don't just want to buy one shirt for myself. I'm going to buy all 6 colors. And there's that scarcity, and even, or with sales, and it's like, well, this is such a good deal. This is a limited time offer. I can't miss out on this. I have to do this, even if it maxes out my credit card. This is a once in a lifetime deal. If I don't do this now, there's no way I'm going to be able to buy it in the future, even if I don't have to have it right now. And that's the question and that kind of takes me into what are needs and what are wants. We're never going to fulfill all of our wants, no matter how much money you make, no matter how many millions of dollars you make. You're never going to satisfy every want. It's learning how to be content. And that's not to well, just stay small and play small and don't have anything. I'm not saying that. But in stewarding your finances well, you're never going to be able to afford everything. So what is a need and what is a priority? And I think that's really crucial, is what's a priority for me in my life right now? And as an example, just with scarcity versus abundance. So I purchased a couple months worth of a product that I really like last month because there was a sale on, and it doesn't happen very often. And so I did that. Now I'm pretty sure that the same sale or something better is going to start this week on that product. And I was thinking about it in my list because I tend to be a more logical buyer. So I have a list of the things that, okay, what do I want? What's a regular price? What's a priority? What really matters? Definitely a logical buyer. And I was like, there was that moment of scarcity where I was like, well, I should buy some more of that because like, who knows when the next time that sale will be on. And then I was like, wait, is that a priority right now in my finances? I purchased a few months worth of product. I have enough for the next few months. If I don't have that product, or if the sale isn't on in a few months, I could probably get by without it. B, it's something that there's a good chance that they'll probably have the same, kind of sale that I had that I, got in on last month, in the future months and coming up. And so just because it is probably going to be on sale again this week doesn't mean I need to like stock up and hoard more of it, right? Because that's not like there's always ways to increase our money and to approach it from that place of expansion. But that doesn't mean that we just like go buy all the things and go, I'm sitting in abundance, it's fine, I'll pay for it. We still get to say no. We still get to make wise decisions. So are you sitting in scarcity? And that kind of goes with that like limited time deal, right? Or are you sitting in abundance and saying, okay, I don't need this. I have abundance. I have an abundance. I bought multiple months of that product. I have abundance of that product right now. I'm fine. All right. So those are kind of some of the mindset pieces that I wanted to bring up and challenge you on. So checking where are you an emotional buyer or a logical buyer? Are you seeking significance or love, trying to like gain love through gifts, right? Or purchases? And then are you sitting in scarcity or abundance? So some tangible, tactical tips for you, regardless of if you're an emotional buyer or a logical buyer, is knowing what your limit is. Now, you're going to break this down and do it differently depending on which of those camps you sit in. But if you know what you're like, what is my limit? Like, what am I willing to spend this month? What is, have I been saving up for some of this stuff? We know that Black Friday comes every year. So have you been setting money aside for these things? Your Christmas budget, maybe there's things for your house. What's your household budget? Whatever those different pieces are. Now, if you don't have a budget and you don't know, it can come down to as simple as like, well, how much money do I have in my bank account? Is my credit card paid off? What am I willing to, what will I be able to sleep at night and have peace over? And setting a limit overall. And knowing what those pieces are. Now, if you're in the emotional buyer camp, this doesn't mean you have to like have every item researched and all of those pieces. If you're going to go stand in the lines and go like true Black Friday shopping, and do all of the things, what's your limit? Like, maybe you have like a $500 prepaid Visa card, and you go get one and you're like, this is my Black Friday shopping, right? Or two of them, or I don't know how, like depending on where you're at financially, right? What is your spending going to be? And so then you're like, well, these are like, I can go spend on whatever I want, whatever my, emotional buying, whatever I'm feeling. But when the prepaid Visa cards run out, I'm done. And as an emotional buyer, also being aware, because you're going to probably make impulse purchases. So knowing what the return policies are and committing to returning things. And this is really key. So making sure as you're shopping that you get receipts and that you keep receipts. Like doing that one step to be organized, like go buy all the things, go have fun with it. And then when you come home, go, okay, I'm choosing this item over that item to stay in budget. And, and also setting aside time on your calendar to go actually make the returns, not just keep them in your closet until it's too late. But right away, going and making those returns. And then the other thing as an emotional spender is kind of check if you, and this takes a little bit more intentionality, but is it really a deal? Is it actually like, is it, because if it's a need, or if it's a priority, and that's the question is, so we're going to assume that you're Black Friday shopping with your base survival needs covered, right? This isn't like, am I going to be able to pay my power bill or go Black Friday shopping? You have your basic living expenses and those needs covered. Then there's like, that's your foundation. Then we're talking about like needs versus wants, kind of on that, because there are things that make our lives easier, right? Or we're committed to purchasing Christmas gifts for kids or, whoever, family members, friends, whatever, Chinese gift exchanges or whatever else you do. So if it's something that you need to be able to check a box beside, right? You're expected to show up with a present for whatever it is. Do you like making sure you're staying within your overall budget, right? Because we all love to like shock and surprise people, or I think most people would love to be able to give extravagant gifts. But is it a priority, or is it something that you want? And it's okay if this season, this year, it's not a priority to go overboard. It can be a wonderful year. And again, this goes back to, what are you seeking? Love and connection, significance, or are you like, and what are you seeking first, right? And are your priorities in alignment? So making sure that you have those priorities, and okay, well, I need to check a box next to this for a Christmas gift, but I don't for this. Like I would love to buy little gifts for a lot of my friends, but I've committed to needing to check Christmas gift, the boxes next to these gifts for these people. I'm committed to that. These would be like the nice extras. These are the things I want to do versus what I need to do, which, by the way, you're still allowed to opt out of a lot of those like need tos, and everybody will be just fine and still love you. If you're in that position, and giving yourself full ownership and accountability to say, that's not in the budget this year, that's not in our finances this year, that's not a priority, and that's okay. So asking yourself if it's really a deal, right? If it's like buy one, get one 25% off, or buy one, get one half off. Okay, so you're getting 25% off on that item. Is that actually a good deal for you to like, to still be spending that much money, right? And looking at that, right? And then also have a list. So as a logical buyer, and if you can as an emotional buyer as well, like having that list beforehand of like, hey, these are the boxes I need to check. These would be the nice to haves if there's like, leftover money on those prepaid Visa cards or whatever, however you're setting that up for yourself. And also knowing, like, if you have some of those items or the boxes you need to check, and you kind of have an idea of what some of those things you're looking for, whether it be gifts or household items or whatever, what the regular price is, or kind of that comparison pricing. And then you can go, okay, is this actually worth it, even on sale, right? And if you have that high brand loyalty, especially if you're an emotional spender, is it actually worth that? And really trying to be objective. If you're a logical buyer, having a list of what you're looking for, knowing your budget, having your list, and also having your list of, okay, this is what these products, were regular price, or, these items. Let's go see if I can find them on sale, and check those boxes. And that's fantastic and that's good. But looking at like, what are those tactical pieces that you need to be looking for, and also still being okay with saying, this is a really good deal. I found this incredible deal, but just because it's an incredible deal doesn't mean that it's in my finances, it's in my budget, it's doable for this year. And sitting in abundance with, it's okay to say no, even if it's an incredible deal. And this applies for either camp. But I think especially as a logical buyer, because if you've done the research and you know all those things, and you're like, this is a really good deal and this is incredible, being able to say, okay, is this a need? Is this a priority? No. Or what am I willing to adjust on my priority list because of this item? That's really key. All right. I think that covers a lot of it. So hopefully this allows you to go into, if you've already started or continue to go through your Black Friday shopping with more peace and also clarity on how you're approaching it from, one of those two camps, and from a place of abundance and looking at your priorities, knowing your priorities, right? Even as far as Christmas gifts go, what's the priority? And just because something's a priority over another doesn't mean that you love that person less or somebody more or whatever. It's what's truly important. I'm pretty sure your coworkers are, or your friends are okay with not getting a gift if it means, your kids get to, open something on Christmas Day, right? But even that, if your kids don't get to open anything, it's okay. They'll still love you. There's so many things you can do for free. And that'll probably be a separate podcast, just around gifts and that, and Christmas and all of that. It's kind of going to be a theme around here, because I know there's so much we get caught up in our heads with, like, well, they won't love us. If we don't show up with all the things, or if they don't open all the gifts on Christmas Day, whatever those pieces are. So choose peace first. Look at what your priorities are. Choose to sit in abundance. And I mean, as a last piece to this, now we're in Black Friday, so I'm not saying this for Black Friday. I'm not going to say go spend the money and then figure out how to pay it off after. One of the biggest tips that I give people is, when you look at an item and the price of an item, how many hours of work would it take for you to pay that item off? How much extra work are you going to have to do? Maybe you have some sort of a side hustle, or you do something, or you even just working an hourly job if you can get extra hours. How many hours is it going to take you to pay for that item? And it just kind of helps it sink in more of like the cost of items and what we're paying for. Now, with all of this said, like I said, this doesn't really apply to Black Friday so much because we're already pretty much here. But how can you expand your income to save up for an item? Like, there's still lots of time between now and Christmas to be able to make an extra $500, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, just even with like one of the businesses that I have. And if you're looking for that way to increase your income, I would love to have a conversation with you. And let's talk about how we can put that extra money in your bank account, cash, actual cash. And then you can go buy the items. So if you're looking for that, let's talk. But also being willing to sit in abundance of, okay, how can I increase my income? Where can I look for increases, right? Not just like cutting back or taking out of other budgets or whatever those pieces are, going without on something, but then how can I expand? Okay. Peace in your heart, and then money in your bank. And that's the whole piece of this. So I hope that this has been helpful and encouraging and leaves you some pieces. Like I said, I'm probably going to do a separate podcast on the emotional versus logical buyer, and make sure you're following me on social media, because I have a free worksheet for you so you can kind of work through that and then kind of go through and set up for yourself as an emotional buyer or as a logical buyer, those tangible things, so that you can have fun enjoy Black Friday, take advantage of Black Friday if you're a logical buyer, and make wise choices and steward your finances well. You just finished another episode of the Rediscover Real podcast. My hope is always that you come away encouraged. And if you found this valuable, would you share it with a friend? And be sure to tag me on social media. I love seeing your takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. And I would so appreciate it if you took a second to rate and review this podcast so that more people can find it. Also, take a peek in the show notes for a link to my website that has a special gift just for you for listening today. As always, I'm on the journey and you're invited. Let's rediscover real together.